Okay, so yeah, good afternoon. So welcome to uh CodeCamp Boots Camp 4.0. We're in week 7 and this is the first class and we're going to be looking at state management, right? More specifically state management in Flutter, right? So for an introduction, right? Whenever you're developing, the front end of your application, it's one of the necessary things is handling the responses to each event that is triggered by when maybe a user clicking on a button or any UI activity, right? So technically, um, we must actually manage the state of UI components that change due to users or end users interaction. So while you're managing the UI state, right, you may actually need to divide, maybe you're having such a massive UI, right, maybe with 200, 300, 400 lines of code with a lot of widgets. So you may want to actually, kind of break it down into multiple smaller components, right? While of course still maintaining that communication, okay, which of course some of you have already I noticed in your task, right? You guys were doing some breaking down, which is actually good. So um the thing about these UI components, right? They should always know the application's state. So state management is one very, very important aspect of Flutter, right? So basically, it's actually just a technique of managing and tracking the state of an application. Okay. And when we talk about the state of an application and tracking and all that, we're talking about user interactions, we're talking about data and UI changes. Okay. So state management in Flutter is just all about managing the data that the app will, render and how it will kind of respond to a user input. So when a user clicks the login button, right, what is the response, right? When a user clicks, the checkbox to accept terms and conditions and a lot of other stuff, what is the what response? Okay, so how is the application able to render and respond to the user was input? So it's just about tracking changes to the state and updating the UI to reflect those changes. So when the user clicks on, the checkbox, right, we need to see the state needs to what change. The UI, the user needs to actually see that there's now a change. That's why you see the icon on that checkbox. When the user fills in every information and clicks login, the state of the application needs to change. Means that it needs to actually what, all things being equal, it needs to switch to, maybe the home page or whatever page that is what required. So this is one very important concept you need to understand, in your Flutter journey. So yeah, we're actually going to look at it early, right, in your development. So I think that will actually really, really help you in future. So let's let's dive a bit more in. Of course, there are state management techniques in Flutter. We have GetX, we have Provider, we have Riverpod, we have what Block, we have Redux. These are all state management techniques that do amazing stuff, with respect to what you're actually building, right? But for the purpose of this training, we are going to be focusing on GetX as a state management or technique. Okay, so we're going to be working with GetX. So what is GetX? GetX is it's a reactive and lightweight, keyword lightweight, very important. So it's a lightweight, reactive, and powerful state management library for Flutter. And it kind of just gives you a very good alternative to traditional Flutter state management solutions like the stateful widget, right? Okay, so this gives you a much better alternative to stateful widgets. It's also a very good alternative to the likes of Provider and Block. So that's what we're going to be using. Now, why are we going to be working with GetX? So GetX reduces, of course, simplicity. It reduces what we call boilerplate code and makes state management what straightforward. So the thing is, you don't have to actually, do a lot of setup. You don't have to have a lot of default classes and code setup to actually, get to use GetX. No, all you basically just need to do is, first of all, you just, set up, add the dependency, the package, your entry point just uses the get material app, and you're good to go. It's actually simple to use. So the simplicity of GetX is one of the major reasons why it is, a go-to state management, route. Okay. Now, another reason for GetX is performance. GetX is actually it's highly optimized for performance with minimal memory usage, and we're going to actually see it in action, right? But these are just few things you need to know. So it's actually highly optimized for performance with minimal memory usage, and of course that's a very, very important aspect of development. So it's not enough to build applications, but what is the impact of that application when it comes to memory? What's the impact? I think one of you pointed something out in the your release app was 100 and something megabytes for just that simple application, right? So how can we actually minimize, memory usage? And of course, GetX actually helps, in that area. So the third reason why we're going to be using GetX is reactivity. So GetX automatically updates the UI when there has been a change in states. And we'll also, these things we'll learn how to, kind of make use of them. So it automatically updates the UI. So when there's a change in state, it updates the UI with respect to that change. And of course, dependency management. So we're going to learn about dependency injection, right? But try to just look at the two words separately as standalone. What does it mean? When you hear the word dependency, what comes to your mind, right? When you hear the word injection or inject, what comes to your mind? So injecting a dependency, something that is required for another thing to actually work. Something, when you're dependent on something, it means that you need that thing, to function properly. So dependency injection. So we're basically injecting a dependency. So GetX actually helps the whole dependency injection and management easy. Okay. And of course, navigation is one very powerful reason why we will be using GetX, right? It's just simplifies, navigation and routing in Flutter. Okay. So let's move. So let's look at a few features of GetX, right? Just a few, right? A lot of them, we'll get to understand and enjoy them when you're actually using rather than just theoretical talk. But today is basically just to introduce you, to GetX. And then in the next class, we're going to do some actual what stuff. We're going to build an application from scratch, right? We're going to build an application from scratch using GetX and of course following best practice. So well, I'm looking at it. So we'll probably the application may take us about maybe 2 weeks. So we'll just trying to make sure we build something solid. So that would actually cover a lot of things that you need to know as a Flutter developer. So these coming weeks is going to be, the coming weeks. Yeah, you don't want to miss any class because Elijah watching it on YouTube is not going to do justice to it at all. Okay, so the some of the features of GetX, right? We have what we call a controller. So just from the you know literal meaning of a controller, something that controls, right? So controllers are actually the core of GetX, right? So what they do is that they manage the state and the business logic of your application. So where you have to write a function that will actually do something, right? You don't write it in the UI, right? Your code should not, those logic that are called business logic of your application, they don't exist or they should not exist in the same file where you just have your what UI, your rows and your columns. No, they exist in a different what file, which is basically where the controller what class. So it manages the state and business logic of your what application. And of course, it does that by just extending the class called the getX controller. So you can say just say class controller. So it extends, meaning it now has access to the powers and everything that getX controller what has. Okay, so another feature which we are going to be making use of is bindings, right? So bindings basically just connects, controllers, specific routes, screens. So it's just a way to connect them together. You can see this is just an example of so this is just a binding class that extends bindings, right? And then you override what and you put in the dependency. So we are doing what to call a get.put. Don't worry, you will understand this when we start. So every dependency that you ever need in your application, they can what be put in your here. And then when you're initializing in the main application, right, you can now call binding. So what happens is this: when you run your application, every class, right, or route or whatever that is needed, right, it's actually what initialized, right? Is actually what initialized and ready for what use. Okay, so we're going to learn to really implement all these things, but binding is just a very powerful feature of what GetX. So because it helps to connect, your controllers to specific routes, or screens, and a whole lot of that. Okay, so then another feature is dependency injection, right? Dependency injection. Now, GetX uses a built-in dependency injection system that makes it easy to, inject dependencies into your controllers, right? And your services. So you can see we have a class called home that extends, and then we're just calling the get view. So we're extending this whole and extending our view class, our home class with get view, and then we are injecting the store controller what with it, right? So this means that with this, by injecting this store controller here, we now have access to whatever business logic, function, method, variable that is in that controller what class. We have access to, to it. Um, and yeah, another feature which is also a very amazing one is the reactive state management. So I think I said that earlier. GetX, it automatically updates the UI when the state what changes, right? So it has this reactivity system. So you can see this here. We have this variable called name, right? Which is just a variable, right? Now to actually make this what's it called? To make this reactive, right? GetX has what we call an observer, right? Which is called OBS. So what just in this line here, what we just did is to make this variable an observable variable by adding the .obs. So this is now an observable what variable. It means that in your UI, using this line of code here, you can now listen. So once this text widget is wrapped in this OBX, which is an observer, it now listens to what the changes in what this variable. So whenever the name changes, it automatically what displays, it automatically what changes the state, it automatically updates the what UI. Why? Because this particular variable, right, is what is an observable what variable. Here is just a variable, but here by adding the .obs, it becomes an observable what variable. So it listens. So what happens is, assuming there's no obx here, assuming you just have a text, with a controller, and then you're assessing. So you can see this is a way to assess this name, especially if it's declared, when it's declared in your controller what class. You can create an instance. Don't worry, we'll get to work, do some hands-on on that. Okay, so assuming you're not observing it and you run your application, what you get definitely just have is Jonathan's this, right? But if for some reason, right, the name changes, right, the application is not going to be able to know. That's why we use the likes of set state. So in your task, you had to use set states such that when you clicked when you checked a particular task, the score, right, is updated on your what card, because your card is listening. But that was using set states, but now we're going to be using OBX. Okay, so that's reactive state management. Okay. um Now another one is routing, and this is actually one of the most interesting um features of getx, because you don't actually have to use a context, unlike other state management um techniques, right? So if you're going to use what we call routes. Now the essence of routing is moving to be able to move from one screen to another, right? So if you're going to use routes, and we have dialogues, right? Snack bars, bottom sheets without context. That's where getx actually thrives. So getx is actually just excellent because you don't need to use um you know context, to actually, make use of it, or to navigate. For those of you, of course, you have done navigation, you see your navigator dot of context dot pop or that. So, but with getx, you don't need context, right? You don't need context at all. So, how do you navigate with, with getx routing and navigation? So we'll just look at these five, but there's much more, right? But just for this. So the very first one, which is the get dot to next screen. So that basically just what navigates to a new screen, right? That's just what it does. So if you want to, let's say you want to go to home, you're in home page, you want to go to profile. All you just need to do is say get dot to what profile, whatever, if that's the name, profile. So get to profile, that's just it. That's all. And you have what moved. You don't have to do navigator dot this and all that. Just get to what next screen. Okay. If you want to navigate to a new screen that has a name, because we're also going to learn about named routing, right? You can actually give give your screens or pages names. So you can use a named route. So it's just say get dot to named. So you now hyphen this. So for example, want to go to details, the details screen. So we say get dot to what name. So get to a named route called details. And that is that. Now, assuming you want to close your dialogue, or your bottom sheet, or maybe your snack bar, or anything you would normally close if you are using I think that's navigator.pop, right? You just use in getx, you just say get.back, that's all, and it's take you back. Just say get.back, and that's all, as simple as that. Now what if you want to go to the next screen? So listen to this one. If you want to go to the next screen and no option to go back to the previous screen, for example, let's say you're doing your application that you have a splash screen, what we call a splash screen, or maybe login screen. Now, of course, after logging in, you shouldn't if a user should not be able to click back button. So imagine if you have logged in on Facebook, you finish registry, you now log in, it now shows you your home screen. When you press the back button, what happens? It closes the application. It doesn't take you back to the login screen. No, you have already logged in. Okay. So that is where you now say get off, and then you pass in the next screen. So what are you saying? Go to the next screen, but there should be no option of going back. So the back functionality or going to a previous screen is what's disabled. So you can use this for splash screens, for login screens, and whatever screen that depends on what you are actually working on. And then of course the last one, if you want to the get dot of all, right? So what this means is that you want to go to the next screen and cancel all previous routes. You want to go to the next screen and cancel all previous routes. So think of it like this is one of the things that'll help you. Think of it like you have series of doors. right? Let's say 5 doors in front of you. You open the first door, right? That's get.2, right? You're going to door 2. That's get.2. Door 1 is still going to be there, so you can still go back. So get.back will take you to door 1, right? So let's say you're now in door 2. When you say get off, you're saying, oh, take me. If you say get off to door 2, right, or room 2 rather, let's use that. It means that take me to room 2 and remove room 1. I don't want to ever go back to room 1. That's basically what get off means. Now, but get dot off all means that, let's say you've gone to let's say room 3 and the last room is room 5, right? Get dot off all means I'm in 5, remove every other route, cancel everything, take it out. I don't even want to be able to go to any other place. It's either there or I'm exiting the application. You understand? So that's get dot off all, right? So you can actually, I think you use this more, let's say it's useful when you're in what's it called, post shopping carts, if you're implementing stuff like that. So but we'll get to make use of it, right? And then we get to understand, how it really works and everything. So that's kind of just a summary of what GetX is all about, right? Just a summary. There are still a lot of other stuff which, just the theoretical concept it won't really help you grasp, the whole concept. But when we start applying that, right, then we are actually good to go. So that's just an introduction to GetX. On Thursday, right, we will start off building an application from the scratch. I don't know what application yet. I'm still trying to see if I can come up with any crazy idea. So what we can do is, if you have an idea, just drop it on the if you have an idea of what you want us to build, right, just drop it on the Discord channel. Don't go and bring any big stuff. We're not building any production application. We're not going to start building your own idea because you're looking for money you make. No, but just for a learning purpose. Remember, whatever you decide, there's no design, so we'll design it together. We'll come up with the design ourselves. We'll come something will in fact it will be very, very interactive and engaging. Okay, we'll build it from scratch. You also learn how to okay, fine. I want to build an application. What's the first thing I'll do? What's the second thing I'll do? What's the third thing? There are other stuff, about GetX, the right likes of localization. I'll use the opportunity to also teach you, themes, and how to teach you about project structure. Okay, and what's the best way to actually arrange your project. There's what we call the layer first approach. There's what we call the feature first approach. So when do we get to use layer first? When do we get to use feature first, right? But everything that we're going to now learn from now on is going to be in the confines of a project, and then we're going to be implementing it as we go. Okay, so that is it about GetX for today. So are there any questions? So if that, let's take questions and then we round it up. Yes, Blessing, go ahead.
Good day, sir.
Yeah.
Please, my question is somehow up the scope of the current work we're doing. However, while I was submitting my last task, I noticed that I got a message from Appetize that I've spent the limit of 30 minutes per month. So I wanted to ask, is there any other way I can host my Android app apart from using Play Store or Appetize? Say, for example, I have 1 or 2 apps I want to put on my portfolio. How do I make it accessible for users to check without hosting it on Appetize, since it's going to be a paid store along the line? Generally, if it is web and even if it's a full stack application, I can still have it running on Heroku or vessel for free. So I wanted to ask if we have any platform of such.
Okay. Can you hear me? I mean, if I can. Can you hear me?
Clearly, sir.
Okay, okay. So you're basically asking what you're basically asking is what platform can you host apart from, let's say if you don't want to host it on Google Play Store. Well, first of all, Advertise has what's it called? They have a view per month, which of course you shouldn't, it's something you can use for testing purposes, right? And you can use for hosting purposes. Now the truth is I don't know um from a portfolio perspective, it's not really ideal because if somebody has gone to open your app, so don't look at Advertise as a means of hosting your application based on project or portfolio kind of thing, right? Think of it that is just for a way to kind of test, it's like think of it like a simulator, right? Where you can actually just test your applications on different devices. And of course, most of these platforms you actually have to pay for them, right? But there are alternatives to Advertise though. I don't really know of any free one. They have Lightspeed Retail, Go Frugal, there's Open Bravo, there's Clover. So in the end, it's just about finding the one that is flexible for you. Now, there are also other um, platforms where you can actually host your application, right? You probably just have to do a bit of research. I kind of don't want to start what's it called? Putting out any brand on this call. You can do a research, or maybe we'll just take that to Discord where I can just drop
Okay,
some.
you know, advertise for them. They will pay us, don't worry.
No, it doesn't work that way. Okay, so but in the end, right, the only people I can advertise for, and it's not really because I'm advertising per se, it's because as a developer, it doesn't make any sense for you to be a developer and not have a Google Google developer account. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's $25, so it's something each and every one of you should start planning ahead, right? You should start planning ahead for to get that. It's a one-time payment, right? Google, it's actually a one-time payment of $25 one time. You pay that, that's all. You can upload 20, 50 applications and you're actually free. Nobody will query you, right? It's App Store that you have to pay yearly, right? I think that's $99 on App Store. You have to pay yearly. Google Play Store is just $25, and then you and also looking at it, it even makes you it makes a where you're thinking about portfolio, it also gives an employer the idea that, oh, you actually have experience with the Google console. Because how many clients wants to build an application that will not be on Play Store or App Store? So when you're showing them that all your applications are not hosted there, they are hosting it in one other platform, right? It's a bit worrisome because they know that in the end product has to either be on App Store or Google Play Store. So and you need to have experience with managing the console, right? Google console, app console, you need that experience. So if you don't have it, it's actually, you know, it's not in the great side. It's not a great side for you. So I would actually suggest that each and every one of you start planning towards, towards that. Okay. But on the um just to satisfy your curiosity, right? So I'm going to drop, I'm currently dropping a link on the Discord, to some alternatives, right? But it's up to you. But I've given my own 2 cents. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
Very well, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
I've sent the link also.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. So, in the absence of no other questions, so each and every one of you, one of the things I also advise is have at the end of this cohort, you should have, apart from the capstone projects you work on, apart from the task, have a product that you want to start building. Now, it does not say don't have a product that is bigger than you, that you want to now start making money from. No, 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 that's not a very good approach. Remember, experience is what you should be after at this moment, not money. Experience, because that is what people are looking for, right? So a lot of employers want to know, what have you built, what have you worked on, where is it? Okay, so have an idea. It could be something very simple for a start. You're not in a competition with anybody, right? It could be something simple but a bit, that shows certain functionalities, that someone could say, oh, wow, okay, that's actually good. So have that idea and start working on it side by side. So especially when we start next week, to build a project from scratch. Now, when we are doing it from the case perspective, from the class perspective, rather, you could also be applying that knowledge in your own personal projects. So before you know it, when we are done, you're either done or close to done, right? And then you already have something on your portfolio waiting, and yet CodeCamp has not finished. So you now have two things. You have your personal stuff, and then the one on the capstone project, should you make it to the final stage. So at least you should have two applications that should be in your belt, your portfolio, when you're leaving CodeCamp. If you don't have, then that is up to you, right? So it's not because you did not have someone to counsel you, but it's because your strength is small. Okay, so let's take note of that. Someone is asking, what is a recommended project structure when using GetX in a large Flutter app? Don't worry, we'll get to from Thursday, we'll get to talk about, project structure, and how to really, really, what structure is best used. Okay. So we'll talk about that on Thursday. Okay. So guys, thank you very much for joining. And for those of you who have issues with your task, let's just continue the discussion on the on Discord. Okay, so but that will be all for today. Thank you very much.